Hello everyone, Tom from Nerdaholics here, and I would like to give my thoughts on the recently released Dead Space Remake. Just before we get into the review/quick thoughts, I'm only going to be showing footage from the opening of the game, as I want to keep this video as spoiler-free as possible. Now, 2023 is shaping up to be a massive year for horror game remakes which include Resident Evil 4, Silent Hill 2, and of course Dead Space. All three of these original titles are held up in very high regard, and fans are going to have high expectations for each of them. Truth be told, I wasn't sure the original Dead Space needed a remake, considering the original holds up very well from a gameplay standpoint and visually still looks very good. However, I'm delighted to say that the Dead Space remake is a fantastic game which more or less improves upon the original in almost every single way. The story and premise is identical to the original, so in that sense they have not really changed much in that regard. You play as Starship engineer Isaac Clarke, who is fully voiced in this remake, who is sent in with a team of people to investigate a distress signal on the mining vessel, the USG Ishimura, only to find out the inhabitants of the ship have been wiped out or turned into these monsters called necromorphs. As Isaac, you put your tools and weapons to good use and fight back against these John Carpenter-esque abominations, whilst repairing the Ishimura and searching for your girlfriend, with moral support from your colleagues Hammond and Daniels. The concept of dismemberment to kill enemies, which was quite a unique spin on the horror formula at the time when the original Dead Space makes a return in the remake. Some of the scenes, like the intro, almost play out beat for beat like the original, however everything has a nice graphical update and overall just looks a lot better. The more you get into the game, you will notice some story beats have changed or been tweaked, but they never come across as if they were detrimental to the overall narrative. Compared to the original game, in which each section of the ship was broken up into different chapters, split up via loading screens, the remake has a much more open feel to it. Chapters end to begin there and then on the spot, and by the end of the game you can more or less walk from one end of the Ishimura to the other without any loading times. The tram system, however, can still be used as a means of fast travel if you wanted to get somewhere a lot quicker though. A new mechanic they introduced are the circuit breakers, in which you will need to feed power from one part of the ship to the other. However, it could be at the detriment to turning the lights off or cutting the air supply from that area of the ship. With the lights off, the game becomes really dark and you'll be pretty much aiming your weapon all the time because it will be your only real source of light. Or you can choose to keep the lights on, but then you have to move very quickly before your air supply runs out, adding to that extra tension. You can't open certain doors, crates and lockers until you acquire the appropriate security level clearance, and later on in the game via a side mission you will access the master security clearance. Within the security clearance doors contains upgrades for your weapon, as well as extra ammo, nodes and credits which you can spend in the shops which are dotted around the Ishimura. Yes, this game now has side missions, which expands more on what happened on the Ishimura prior to your arrival and gives you more of a reason to explore every nook and cranny of the ship. At times, Dead Space Remake looks visually stunning and easily one of the best looking horror games ever made. Huge credit to the talent at Motive Studios. Although the original game still looks great, the remake has managed to update everything visually but still maintain that overall aesthetic from the original. The game has been praised for its fantastic sound design, and frankly it's really hard to disagree. Weapons feel powerful, monsters sound terrifying, Isaac's curb stomping has weight to it, the overall atmosphere of the game leaves you constantly feeling on edge. It's also very refreshing to play a AAA game on launch which doesn't play like absolute arse. I've been playing the remake on my PS5 in performance mode, and I cannot really recall any game-breaking bugs or glitches. As for the gameplay side, it is not too far removed from the original. Weapons have had tweaks to them combat-wise, however I can confirm the plasma cutter is still the best weapon in the game. In addition to the plasma cutter, the other weapons I mainly use were the pulse rifle, which is basically this game's version of an automatic rifle, force gun, mainly because of the pushback it has on enemies, and the line gun, which is great for setting mine traps and severing limbs. Stasis and kinesis are still awesome to use, and this is where I felt the combat really tweaked when you're dealing with large groups of enemies, whether it's slowing enemies down using stasis so you can fire on them freely, or using kinesis to launch pipes, severed limbs, or fire canisters at them. If I had to touch on aspects I wasn't too keen on, at times enemies can feel like bullet sponges, particularly when you play it on the harder difficulty. It felt like I was pumping rounds and rounds of bullets into the necromorphs' limbs, and they just wouldn't sever from their bodies. Enemies which were annoying in the original are still annoying in the remake. The two enemies I can't stand are the Guardians, who constantly spit out other parasites for you to deal with, and the other being Swarm or Hordes, which are those small little alien-like creatures which, if they attach themselves to you, they will drain your health bar very, very quickly. Controlling Isaac in zero gravity can feel a little bit clunky and sometimes obstructive, especially when you're being fired from enemies at a distance. Other minor annoyances aside, all is forgiven for fixing that god-awful asteroid turret section from the original. Now you control these different turrets with your kinesis while floating in zero gravity. No rage quitting here this time. If any of you wondering, no, I have not played the Callisto Protocol, so I can't give you an honest opinion on how the two games compare. However, speaking to people who have played both, they've pretty much said the Dead Space remake is the game the Callisto Protocol wishes it could be. I mean, ouch. If you can't tell by now, I love this remake. I have completed the game 3 times, once on normal, once on New Game Plus on hard mode, and I recently got the Platinum Trophy for finishing the game on impossible difficulty. I don't want to say the remake makes the original obsolete. The original is still a great game and definitely worth your time playing. However, if I ever wanted a Dead Space fix, I will more than likely be playing the remake. I suppose the question is now, will we get a remake of Dead Space 2? Overall, I strongly recommend the Dead Space remake for both old fans and new fans to the series.